So quick update here before I get into the inversions tutorial. The Demon is finished, at least all the track work is, and this is a really big coaster. Well, not actually, but I decided to build it the same height as Raging Bull, and the Demon is kind of an out and back coaster, which meant it's really long. And so I ended up kind of squishing in some of these elements. Like this helix here really shouldn't be that close to the station, and I made that tunnel that's just straight track a little bit shorter, but it fits in here now at least. This was a really easy coaster to make, I would say, aside from the inversions, which I'm getting to later. But like this support tower right here was super easy to make and didn't use that many pieces. Additionally, I think I actually used more pieces on kind of framing out the footprint of this coaster than I did on actually making those support towers. And so if you don't have many pieces, or you're like trying to build your first freestyle K'NEX coaster, I would recommend using an aero coaster because it's going to be a lot easier. But vertical loops, and especially clothoid loops, are kind of hard to make with K'NEX, especially with this kind of spinal track that I was using. I chose it because I needed to go about 4 track segments here without any supports, and this kind of spinal track is the most, it's going to hold its shape, and it's going to hold up to the forces that the train puts on it. However, it also likes to be straight, and so I don't have quite as tight of a radius as I wanted. It's not quite as much of a teardrop shape as the actual coaster. However, it works, right? I found that one of the hardest parts in making a vertical loop is making it symmetrical. And this first loop took a few attempts just because I was trying to figure out how I can get this to be a perfectly symmetrical loop, and it's a lot more than just putting the same supports on both sides. I eventually found that it's most important to find where the center is. So I have the center marked right here, and actually I made this whole kind of mapped it out with this thing. I have a piece right here. This represents the very middle of the loop. This right here is where I wanted the tracks to cross. And then I also mapped out the extent of how high and how wide I wanted the track to be on the loop. And I found that this helped out a lot more because then because aero loops have this like main support on either side that connects to where the track is widest. And I could just make this support to line up with where I wanted the loop to be widest on this kind of jig right there. And I eventually made the loop a bit bigger, and so it doesn't quite line up anymore. But with this loop, it's a bit closer. And I found that actually worked out really well. Additionally, you do want to make the supports exactly the same on both sides. And I added this other support right here, which is like a 5th rail going all the way around, just to kind of smooth out that curve, and it adds a little bit more support. So now with this loop, especially because of this support that I added right there that isn't in the actual Demon, but I kind of needed it because the loop now, this is actually pretty sturdy. It doesn't go back and forth too much, and it has that Z shape from the top. Aero corkscrews have this signature circle spiral look, and that was probably the hardest part to get. Some tips for that would be to make both your support structures for these corks the exact same, and additionally that when you are planning out the footprint for this, to make sure that that step up is the same length as when you go across there. Just because that will help you keep that circle shape, and to make sure that you plan it out before you actually start laying track. Additionally, when you're making that transition into the cork, try to make it a bit more drawn out than you think you need to. Yes, with aero coasters, it's okay to have awkward transitions because that's kind of their thing, but especially with the micro track, that if you just make that a little bit more drawn out, that it goes a bit more smoothly. Yeah, so essentially I just made a triangle out of these pieces, connected these gray rods through there, and a flexi rod into the middle. The flexi rod is going to help keep that arc shape, because if you can kind of see on the top that if I just had these gray rods, it would be a bit lopsided, and it already is kind of. But also those green flexi rods are going to have a lot more grip to them than these normal rods. And so if you use a flexi rod there, these, where it's getting connected like that, it's not going to slip. Well, I think that's all I have for y'all. Just make sure when you are making your, really any roller coaster element, that you take your time to support it well, to shape it well, and if you need to, you restart and try it a little bit different so that you have it the way that you want it. I probably won't get that next official demon video out in a while. I'm going to try to do some of the actual rock work. That the demon has a lot of rock work and tunnels and stuff that I feel like just having this much straight track doesn't quite do the demon justice. So I'm going to try to dress it up a little bit, and that'll be a while. But the next demon video will be coming out. It's just not in the next few weeks.